In this video, I'm going to be showing you around my 1972 Datsun 510. I originally purchased this car in August of 2019 as a very dirty yet straight shell that was pulled out of a barn. The vehicle was filled with mouse droppings and cobwebs and lots of dirt. I had no interior, no engine, no transmission, no seats, but it was a good shell. And then over a period of about 17 months, transformed it into this. The exterior is all brand new body and paint work done by a local shop here in Oregon. It is painted the original 918 color code orange, also called Mexican orange in the catalog. This is the original color of the car, just done fresh and new. I love the color. It looks like a pumpkin, but it's a very unique, very 70s color. All the bodywork is very well done. I had a shop that really knows what they're doing do the bodywork because I am not a body guy. Some of the mods they did was I had them delete license plate lights, shaved the rocker trim molding holes, so that's all smooth down there, no chrome strip. And then on the opposite side, I had them shave the antenna holes. The front of it, we're using a BRE air dam from BRE2.net, so one of the reproduction ones. Always my favorite, always a classic, can't go wrong with it. And then the lower valence here is a fiberglass piece from Troy Ermish Racing. The rest of the car is all the original panels that came with it. So that's the same hood, fenders, doors, trunk lid. So after the paint, everything was reassembled with all new chrome trim everywhere. All the moldings are new, all new rubber gaskets. As you 510 guys know, that stuff is hard to source. It took me a very long time. I had stuff coming in from Australia. Some stuff I found in the Middle East, believe it or not. The rear bumper here is a reproduction one. I think I got that from Fab, possibly. Can't really remember, it was a couple years ago. The front bumper is the original that came with the car. It is not 100% perfect, but it's pretty good. Might do a reproduction one later when they're more available. Brand new taillight assemblies with Euro lenses. Opted for the Triple S C-pillar vents. Yeah, and then of course the classic BMW 2002 mirrors. These are my absolute favorite mirrors for this car. They're really high quality. They're stainless steel. They are being reproduced now, so they're not stupidly priced, but they just look the part on this car. I am not a fan of fender mirrors. I like a nice clean fender. Other people like them, so that's fine. The windshield is a reproduction one. I think I bought the last one in my area and I hoarded that in my attic until it was time to put this car together. This is aftermarket windshield gasket. It seems to work pretty well. This is the original chrome trim that came with the car. Original wiper blades just refreshed. When it was painted, we left the drip rail trim on the car and just masked it. As you probably know, this trim is a pain to deal with. So that stayed on the car and just got masked and turned out great. When it was painted, nothing was in the interior, so the whole interior and the roll cage was all sprayed with the same paint at the same time. So the interior and the exterior match very well. Oh yeah, the gas door has a push button release. There you go. There's your modern Honda gas cap. Talk about that more later. And I left the side marker lights on just because I'm just a little nostalgic for these big blocky marker lights. I just like them. I don't know why. So I left them on. I know there's more sleek solutions. I went with the Euro turn signal assemblies in the front. Once again, had to source those. Most of this car is just hunting down parts. This grill is the actual grill that came with the car. I stripped all the paint off of it, repolished everything, and then sprayed the parts black. They're supposed to be black, and left the other parts polished. I also have a supersonic grill, which looks good on the car, that I can swap on. I also have a full gloss black powder coated grill if I want to change up the look. So, you know, different grills for different occasions. Let's go under the hood. All right, so under the hood, we have the bread and butter of the build. This is a Honda F20C. This is a 2-liter 4-cylinder engine from a 2001 Honda S2000. It's mated up to its Honda 6-speed transmission, which is a beauty of a transmission. Obviously, still rear-wheel drive. The Honda engine is a lovely, lovely engine. In stock form, it revs to 9,000 RPM, which is how I like to drive it. And it is a blast to drive. It is not the fastest car I've ever driven, but it is so fun. And that's really why I built the car. I'm an older guy. I don't really care about horsepower anymore, but I do care about having fun when I drive. And this engine delivers that. The engine is mostly stock, not a lot done to it. Stock compression, stock internals. It is a very low mileage engine. Probably about 35,000 on it when it was pulled out of the donor car. And it sat in storage for many years until I finally got my hands on it. Yeah, it's equipped with aftermarket header because of fitment issues. And as you can probably see, I had to modify that guy down there to get the exhaust going where I wanted it to go. It's got some basic stuff like a Ballade Sports timing chain tensioner, Radium Engineering fuel rail and pressure regulator, and an aftermarket radiator, of course. The radiator is one that I had custom made for this car with dash 16 custom hoses from BMRS. These are great hoses. They're nice and flexible, but they're Teflon. And those screw onto AN fittings that I welded on the coolant inlet and outlets on the engine. Yeah, she's just a very clean, very good running S2000 engine. I couldn't ask for anything better. If anybody wants more power out of these, they love boost, and there's lots of room right here, but that's not anything I would consider doing with this car. I love it naturally aspirated. I love the sound of it, love the feel of it. It's still running the stock Honda ECU, so VTEC is still about 6,300 RPM, red line at 9. Idle's great, cold start's great, just a pleasure to drive. Also under the hood, we have this big guy. This is a Garage Theory strut tower bar that I purchased a couple years ago, and then I added this little V section to tie it into the firewall, because that's normally not part of it. And before I got the car painted, I had welded in a doubling plate right there for that exact purpose. So that was already there, ready to go. But yeah, so that thing fits in there very nicely. Nice little strut tower bar, clears the engine just fine. The engine is sitting on a custom front cross member. It is built off of a James Boswell Coachworks or JBC rack and pinion front cross member. I think it's their version 2 or version 3, can't remember. And then the steering rack I had to purchase from a company in Europe. I think it's a Ford Cosworth or Escort steering rack or something. I don't remember anymore. Their JBC provides the steering linkage, and it bolts up to the 510 steering shaft right there. Great upgrade. No more steering box, no more drag link, no more hokey dokey steering stuff. That is all gone. And then on top of that cross member, I had to fabricate engine mounting towers for the S2000 engine. That would include all this stuff here. Yes, I sanded all the welds down. I don't know why, but it's fun. And then custom bracket, I used some sort of an engine isolator. I can't remember which one. Just mocked it all up, welded it in there, got the engine where I wanted it. And speaking of engine positioning, it's about as far back as I wanted it to go, because if I go back any farther, the front of the oil pan will hit the cross member. So I did not slide it any farther back. It probably could have gone another inch if it weren't for that oil pan issue. And it also has to sit at this height because of oil pan clearance with the cross member as well. So that pretty much dictates where the engine's going to sit, and luckily that works very well. The engine bay is pretty bare, just only the necessities. It does have wipers, and they do work. Decided to put those on. It's an Acura Integra wiper motor. Yeah, so all new brake lines. I had to make all those. It's got a 7/8 master cylinder from a 280Z. Willwood proportioning valve and all new hard lines running everywhere. Custom, I think that's a 3-inch intake. Yeah, or it's 2 3/4. Can't remember. Actually, that looks like 2 3/4. But just a custom intake I put on there because these cars like to have an intake tube on them in order to get the best power and sound out of them. But yeah, and then fuel lines are Teflon, and they're right there going down the firewall and under the car. We can take a look at that a little closer later. One other mod to the front was the removable core support. So by undoing these 2 screws on each side and disconnecting the cable for the latch, I can take this core support out, or core support beam, and obviously take the radiator out, and that makes it a lot easier to get this engine out of this engine bay, because this is a very tall engine and tall transmission. It's not very wide, but it's very tall. When I was fitting it in the car, I kept having issues of cracking into this thing, and so I eventually just cut this out, and it made it so much easier to get the engine in and out. And it bolts right back in. I would highly recommend that mod to anybody. It works extremely well. Yeah, and then nothing fancy with the headlights, just standard halogens. Past cars I've gone crazy with HIDs and stuff, but just keeping it simple on this one. I didn't want wiring and extra junk everywhere. And I don't really drive this car at night, so there's the original engine tag. Yep, 92 horsepower, that's right. Sounds good to me. Oh, speaking of horsepower, this thing, I think these engines are rated at 240 at the flywheel. I think I dynoed it at about 200, but I had a injector leaking at the time of the dyno, and I've since fixed that. I never went back, but I think she'll make a little bit more power because I don't think it was running perfectly. But I think, yeah, it'll make whatever a stock S2000 makes. All right, let's take a look at the interior. Love me some vintage stickers. All right, interior is pretty basic. We got new factory door cards in the doors, new rubber seals everywhere, etc., etc. This is where you get a first real glimpse of the roll cage, which was built for me by a local shop. It is a full 6-point cage, so it ties in here down below the A-pillars, goes up, braces to the A-pillar, full ceiling hoop to the main bar, and then ties into the floor just behind the driver's seat and the passenger seats, and then through to the rear and ties to the basically the rear shock mounts back there. So yeah. Seats are Sparco QRTRs, which are a lightweight fiberglass seat, and one that my 37-inch waist fits into just fine, which was the most important thing. Yeah, and Sparco 4-point harness on the driver's side and just a shoulder belt on the passenger side. For driver controls, Sparco wheel with a removable hub. Mostly did that for security reasons. If I ever park the car, which I don't, in a place where I am nervous about it, I would take the wheel off and just take it with me. Inside, I might as well get in it. I made a carpet kit. I'm not the greatest carpet guy, but I got it in here. It works okay. The dash is original. It's an aftermarket dash cap. because the factory one was all cracked. And this whole area here is heavily modified to hold this AEM screen right here, which is a great tool to have. But it's just is really difficult to modify this dash piece to hold it where I want it. It's in there. It doesn't look, it's in there okay. This whole thing could be better, and if I had to redo it, I would do it differently. But for now, it works. It's not super pretty, but it does the job just fine. We got our HVAC controls here, but there is no heater to control, so that doesn't do anything. Added a little USB power outlet here. This is the USB connection to program the dash, so to interface with that. The tunnel had to get much taller to accommodate that tall S2000 transmission. It didn't get any wider, but it got taller. So as a result, I do not have a heater, or the factory heater would not work in here. So maybe in the future, an aftermarket heater will find its way in there, a smaller unit. Stock factory parking brake. Just love the feel of it, love to have it. That actually pulls on a cable system to some Willwood calipers in the back we can look at later. This is a CAN bus keypad. So what this does is this interfaces with the power distribution module, which is underneath the seat right here. It's a ECU Masters PDU. And that power distribution module has all everything in the car that needs power connects to it. And then depending on what buttons you press, you program how you output the power to all those accessories. There's a fat battery cable going from the battery to the PDU. And then from there, it distributes power out to everything that's needed. It's an awesome little system. So it basically means there's no fuses or relays in this car. Actually, that's a lie. There's 2 relays for the turn signals, one for left, one for right, because you need something to click when your turn signal's blinking. So basically just for the audible click, I have relays in there. But there's no real functional relays in the car. There's no fuse box. Everything is done through the power distribution unit. If you don't know about these things, I'd highly recommend researching them. Most ECU companies have them. So the shifter comes through a sheet metal tower, and this is all stock S2000 stuff. Shifter placement's good. This bezel is 3D printed. I had to measure stuff and make a 3D printed bezel to sort of finish it off, but it turned out pretty well. Under here, it's the wiring. Behind that panel is the stock ECU with the wiring. That AEM module is a 22 channel CAN sensor module. So what's happening there is it is receiving inputs from the factory ECU and from other sensors on the car, and it is translating that data into a CAN message that is then sent to this dash. So the dash and this module work together to show all the information I want to know right here on the screen. The screen is completely programmable, and you can set the look of it. You can do so much with it. It's amazing. These are shift lights across the top. You can program when those turn on and what they do. So if I were to switch to an aftermarket ECU that has CAN output, I would not need this CAN sensor module anymore. But because I'm running the factory ECU, I need this module to translate all those signals into a CAN message that can be sent to this dash. So aftermarket ECU already has all that information in CAN format and can send it straight to the dash. That's not what I have here. So that's why I need that module right there. And that module is controlled also through this USB as you're programming this dash. So little advanced stuff, but it was great learning all of it, and it works really, really well. Okay, so if you shave your rear license plate lights, where is your license plate light? Well, it's in these tiny little bolts right here. These are LED bolts. So those are wired to illuminate the license plate when it's nighttime and you turn on your lights. So let's look inside the trunk. All right, so inside the trunk, get a this. This is, well, obviously the big thing right in the middle is a 10-gallon radium fuel cell equipped with the fuel cell surge tank. So what's going on in here is there is a fuel pump that scavenges fuel from the bottom of the fuel cell. So from the very bottom of it, and sends it into a container that's part of this unit. And then there's one pump inside the container that then feeds the engine through the feed line. So that ensures you never get fuel starvation, even when you're going around high G corners and sloshing the fuel around a lot. You always have fuel in that container feeding that one pump that's feeding the engine. So I'm just using a Walbro 255 to feed this engine because it's not making very much horsepower, but it's all done through 6AN PTFE lines. This structure here is something I made that holds the fuel cell, and I did it in a way that I can unbolt this fuel cell, pull it out, and I can drop in a 14-gallon if I decide 10-gallon isn't quite enough. But so far it's been just fine for me. As part of this structure, I have this little pocket back here. I made a little box I can store stuff in, so I have emergency flat tire, and I have a tool kit back here. Got a little Honda Optima battery, yellow top, bolted into the framing. Works really, really well. And then you can also see where the roll bar comes through and grabs the rear strut towers. Yeah, super nice system. The filler, so when you fill up the fuel, it comes in through this hose. And this neck right here is from a Honda Accord that I modified so that I could clamp this hose on here. And then I also welded on the 510, I think it's a 5-bolt ring that mounts right there from the outside. And then, so I'm using a Honda cap that's vented, and I also have the venting function of this Honda neck. That's what this hose is. So as you're filling up, air is coming out of this hose. Air is coming out of the fuel cell as it's filling up with fuel, and venting and going out as you're filling it up. So, and then when the cap is on, the fuel tank vents through this hose, which goes into the recovery canister, and then the recovery canister vents through a small hose to the atmosphere right here. So it works well. Everything's functioning just fine. Yeah, so it's got a fuel level sender which sends a signal to the AEM dash, so I just don't know how much fuel is in there. Once again, it has to go through that CAN sensor module talked about earlier, and it's got the nice carbon fiber lid. But yeah, great little unit. So that's the main showpiece of the trunk. Okay, the car is now up in the air. So we're gonna take a look at the underside and the stuff that I really like to do. So starting at the back here, you can see the underside of the fuel cell and how it sort of ties into the floor. Okay, and then obviously, yes, there's a muffler on it. This muffler attaches to the rest of the exhaust system, which is a 2.5 stainless steel. Yep, that's a catalytic converter. Hand-built system that myself and a friend put together. Very proud of this exhaust. It is super tucked. It is 2.5 inch, mostly for fitment reason, and the fact that this is only a 200 horsepower engine, roughly. And I think we really nailed the exhaust job. It is just a super tucked exhaust, doesn't rattle on anything, and is just a work of art. So I'm really proud of that part of it. Also under here is so much to look at. There is the S2000 transmission, and you can get a good look at the James Boswell rack and pinion steering system. Let me get a light over here. The front sway bar is I think it's a Mad Dot one from Australia, I believe. Funky design, but it clears the engine. Could probably do something better there, but you know, sometimes you just got to get what you get. The front struts are 280ZX that have been shortened with, I don't know, about an inch or so, and Coney inserts have been put in them. Technotoy tuning. spring setup and upper camber plates. These front control arms are OEM ones that have been modified. That's also a JBC kit as well. So they have a Heim joint that you modify the end of the arm with, and then this bolts into the JBC cross member. And you can change the offset of that, where that Heim joint attaches, which will then change your caster. We got brake lines, we got fuel lines, we got parking brake cables. So this is where the factory 510 cable ends, and it pulls on a block that is now pulling a pair of low car cables that are attached to the Willwood mechanical parking brakes that you can't see from right here, but I'll get to those. The rear end is a Subaru R180 diff. It's a limited slip. It's from a JDM STI 3.9 ratio, and it's a clutch style limited slip. Factory mustache bar with polyurethane bushings, and then CV shafts from the drive shaft shop. The rear swing arms have been modified to be fully adjustable. Can't remember where I got that kit, but it's a weld-on kit that you can pivot here and swing it out to change your toe, and then you can move this guy up and down to change your camber. And then out here we have no adjustability. All the adjustability is done at this joint. But inside of these arms, there's spherical bearings, which I highly recommend doing because the polyurethane ones just cannot handle the amount of angular movement that's needed at these joints when you are adjusting them for a lowered car. Rear shocks or rear coilovers are from Techno Toy as well. And yeah, just bolt onto this factory shock mount there. Yeah, new bearings, everything. I think that's just a Suspension Techniques rear sway bar, if I remember correctly. But I custom made some mounts in there because I no longer have the factory spring right here. So I changed the pocket and made it a sway bar mount. I actually moved the mounting point farther up so that the sway bar doesn't sit as close to the ground. The springs are no longer here because they're now part of the rear coilovers. So yeah, a lot of modification work into that cross member. Shaved off a lot of tabs and things I didn't need. Enlarged the exhaust hole. It was a lot of work. I know it doesn't look like it, but it was. And then it's powder coated, just a chassis silver. One more thing, custom driveline. So Subaru yoke right here. Custom shaft all the way up to the S2000 slip joint that bolts to the transmission. And then custom transmission cross member right here, obviously to hold the back of the transmission up. So let's talk brakes and wheels and tires for a little bit. This car is using 16x7 plus 22 Panasports, obviously a classic wheel, one of my favorites, and it's hard to go wrong with Panasports. So 16x7 is a great size for this car because it's about as wide as you can fit in stock fenders without modifying a bunch of stuff, which I did not want to do. These lips are rolled and I have less than a finger length of clearance, and this is only a 205/45/16 tire, so you know it's really hard to go bigger. Luckily I only have 200 horsepower, but yeah, for guys making power, you're gonna have to do something back here to get more tire, and there's some solutions out there. I do have a set of Proxys R1Rs that can take these ones off eventually and put on the R1Rs for even more grip, but that's about as wide as I can get in here. The plus 22 offset is good for a stock 510. For this particular car, I actually had to space it out a few millimeters, I think 8 millimeters, to clear this brake caliper. As you can see, it is so close, but it does clear. So this is the Willwood Dynolite 4-piston brake caliper, and then this is the mechanical parking brake caliper, which is actuated with the pull cables we looked at earlier under the car. This is a custom brake setup that I designed and made a one-off of, and it works well, except the caliper, you need a wheel with a lot of caliper clearance. Luckily this wheel just has barely enough, and it works. So that's good. I could take the spacer out, but the wheel would go in a little bit more. Maybe I could squeeze a wider tire, but then I'd be hitting my brake caliper. So it's all a balance of getting everything just right. This is I think it's a 10.8 vented rear disc from Willwood as well. And that rides on a custom machined rotor hat that I designed. So yeah, all in all, it's a custom setup, but it works really well. And then up front, same wheel, same offset, more caliper clearance, thankfully. I did have to space this one out as well, just because the wheel, the inside of the rim was touching the threaded collar of the suspension. So I had to space it out and got it just right. I think I used a 10 mil spacer up here. Both front and rear wheels use extended ARP studs, so there's plenty of meat on those lug studs for little spacers like that. But the package works really well. It's a square tire setup, so 205 45s front and rear. And I can't go to 15s because of brake clearance. I think these are 11-inch rotors. Once again, vented. These ones are 1-inch thick rotors. Another thing about the front brakes is that it is another custom design kit that I did. It uses a 280ZX hub, and then it has a custom billet machined rotor adapter, hard to see in there. And then that bolts to the Willwood rotor, and then it's got a custom bracket for the Willwood caliper, for the Dyno caliper. So that's another custom setup. Once again, just for this car, just one off, not making any more. Same caliper as the rear, but different internal piston size in the caliper. So bigger pistons on the front caliper, smaller pistons on the rear. And it also has an adjustable proportioning valve, which is in the engine bay, which we saw earlier. And all that works well together. There was a lot of engineering work that went into getting a brake setup. Not just slapping together parts, but actually doing the engineering work ahead of time. Talking to Tilton, talking to Willwood, getting all the calculations right, and I am happy with how it turned out. Let's hop in and fire it up. So power it on. Make sure she's in neutral. Ignition. Engine start. This thing's been sitting for like 3 weeks and it fires right up every single time. Parking lights, headlights, wipers, emergency flashers, radiator fan, nothing.